The grand ballroom of the Manhattan Charity Gala glittered with cascading crystal chandeliers, their light reflecting off polished marble floors and the sleek glass of champagne flutes. Laughter and the soft hum of conversation mingled with the strains of a live string quartet, creating an atmosphere that was both opulent and electric. Amidst this sea of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, Lila Hart felt painfully out of place. At 23, she had spent most of her life working tirelessly to support herself and her family, and tonight she was here not as a guest, but as a volunteer helping with the gala's logistics. Her dress, simple yet elegant, had been borrowed from a friend, and while it did its best to mimic sophistication, Lila could feel the eyes of Manhattan's elite brushing over her as if she were an unpolished note in a perfectly orchestrated symphony. She clutched a tray of champagne nervously, trying to blend in, yet every polished laugh and whispered compliment around her reminded her how far removed she was from this world. Across the room, Ethan Caldwell stood like a portrait of privilege and charm. At 27, he carried the weight of his family's luxury hotel empire with a calm, practiced ease, though recent corporate scandals had left cracks in his carefully maintained public image. His tailored suit hugged his athletic frame, and a faint, enigmatic smile played on his lips as he engaged with socialites, the kind who measured their worth in the shimmer of diamonds and the softness of silk. Yet beneath the veneer of effortless charm, there was a guarded tension in his posture, a wariness shaped by the high expectations of his lineage and the constant scrutiny of the public eye. Fate, it seemed, had decided to intervene. As Lila navigated the crowded floor, balancing a tray of sparkling wine, her elbow brushed against Ethan's sleeve, sending a rich red stream cascading across his crisp white shirt. Time seemed to stop. Conversations cut off mid-laughter, instinct of someone used to control, yet there was something else there too, an undeniable curiosity, a flicker of intrigue that belied his composed exterior. As the murmurs around them swelled, a tall, glamorous woman in emerald silk, Vivian Sterling, sauntered over with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her whispered compliments and pointed gestures toward Ethan underscored the invisible walls of social class, making Lila feel smaller, insignificant, a guest who had wandered into the wrong story. Lila could hear the whispers, see the sideways glances, feel the judgment. Who is she? How inappropriate. Every word struck with the precision of a scalpel, yet Lila couldn't move, trapped in a mixture of embarrassment and fascination. Her eyes locked on Ethan. Then, breaking the tension in the most unexpected way, Ethan extended his hand to her, his voice calm but commanding over the subtle hum of the crowd. "Dance with me," he said, as if the world outside this ballroom ceased to exist. The room collectively leaned in, shocked by his audacity, the social norms shattered in an instant. Lila's heart hammered as she accepted, her small hand swallowed by his confident grip. The first notes of the waltz swirled around them, and she was swept into a world she had only glimpsed from afar: luxury, scrutiny, danger, and desire. Each step was a delicate balance between awe and terror, the thrill of attraction tinged with the sharp awareness that every eye in the room was upon them. In that single, scandalous dance, a story began to unfold, one of unexpected connection, class tension, and the promise of emotional upheaval that neither Lila nor Ethan could yet comprehend. The clash of worlds, the collision of wealth and modesty, attraction and embarrassment, set the stage for a night that would linger far beyond the sparkle of chandeliers. Lila's pulse raced, every nerve alert, as she realized that a simple accident had ignited something far more potent, a social scandal, a forbidden intrigue, and the first beat of a story that would challenge both of their lives in ways neither of them could anticipate. The ballroom's glittering facade could not hide the storm brewing in the space between them, a storm that promised heartbreak, desire, and transformation. Lila Hart's world was one of modest walls and relentless motion, the kind of Brooklyn apartment where every creak of the floorboards echoed the careful calculation required to make ends meet. At 23, she had learned early that ambition alone wasn't enough. She had to pair it with grit, ingenuity, and the constant hum of sacrifice. Her mother, Grace, worked 2 jobs, an early morning as a receptionist at a small law firm and evenings cleaning offices across the city. Grace's exhaustion was etched in the lines of her face, but her eyes held an unspoken pride for the daughter who refused to be limited by circumstance. Lila often carried the weight of that pride like a backpack filled with bricks, heavy, unyielding, yet impossibly precious. During the day, Lila worked at a local cafe, crafting lattes and cappuccinos with precision and warmth, her smile a practiced mask that belied her exhaustion. The cafe was her small stage, a place where she interacted with a cross-section of New York life, but at night, she shifted into another role: volunteer. Charity events, galas, and local fundraisers were more than community service, they were stepping stones toward college funding and a better future. She moved through these events like a shadow, blending into the grandeur she could never truly claim, absorbing the elegance of crystal chandeliers, tailored suits, and hushed conversations about yachts and investments. In these spaces, she felt both exhilarated and painfully aware of the social gap that separated her from the people who glided past her with effortless grace. Her best friend Maya had been her anchor since high school. Pragmatic, fiercely protective, and endlessly sarcastic, Maya had warned Lila more than once about the dangers of getting emotionally entangled with someone from a world that existed in magazines and charity gala programs. "They don't live in Brooklyn, Lila. They live in another universe," Maya had said, arms crossed, brow furrowed. Yet Maya also understood Lila's heart better than anyone, recognizing the spark of resilience and longing that made her friend impossible to restrain completely. In Maya's eyes, Lila was capable of brilliance, but brilliance didn't always translate into surviving the predatory charm of billionaires. Ethan Caldwell's life, by contrast, was a series of meticulously arranged windows and walls, each reflecting wealth, influence, and expectation. His penthouse overlooked the city in a panorama of steel and glass, a constant reminder of both privilege and pressure. His father, Charles Caldwell, was a man whose approval was as rare as it was critical, a patriarch whose demands shaped Ethan's every action and decision. Social events, press appearances, and carefully curated partnerships formed the skeleton of Ethan's existence, but beneath the polished surface, he was weary. The shallow smiles and rehearsed conversations of Manhattan's elite had long lost their charm, leaving him secretly longing for authenticity, for connection untainted by inheritance or agenda. Ethan's recent heartbreak had left deeper scars than the public could see. His ex-girlfriend had betrayed him spectacularly, leaking sensitive company information for publicity, shattering both trust and reputation. Since then, he had learned to mask his vulnerability with charm. His interest in Lila, initially sparked by a spilled glass of wine and the audacity of her presence in a world she didn't belong to, was less about attraction at first glance and more about a rare authenticity he couldn't ignore. The gala accident haunted Lila long after the room had quieted and the night had ended. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined the fine crystal splattered across Ethan's shirt, the whispers that had followed, and the social glares that had pierced through her borrowed elegance. Her cheeks still burned when she replayed it, and yet, buried beneath the embarrassment, there was a flutter of something unfamiliar, curiosity, maybe even hope. That Ethan Caldwell, the heir to a sprawling empire and the man whispered about in elite circles, could notice her, could smile at her in the chaos, this was a seed that refused to be ignored. For Ethan, Lila represented a stark contrast to the performative warmth of his usual companions. Her authenticity, her unpolished presence, and the way she seemed genuinely herself amidst wealth and pretension intrigued him. She challenged the invisible rules he had learned to navigate, forcing him to confront emotions he had long buried. Both of them, in their separate worlds, were vulnerable, hers rooted in self-doubt and social inadequacy, his in betrayal and familial pressure. The stakes were high. Lila risked pride, potential humiliation, and the whispering judgment of high society simply by stepping into Ethan's orbit. Ethan risked exposing himself to genuine emotional connection in a world that had trained him to value appearances above all else. Family expectations, personal ambition, and the unrelenting social ladder both constrained and defined their every move. In this tangled intersection, empathy and yearning collided, creating a fragile, electrifying tension as the city lights shimmered outside their respective windows. Lila's modest apartment and Ethan's opulent penthouse, both were unknowingly orbiting the same gravitational pull. Their lives, so different in every measurable way, were now entangled by a single, scandalous incident. The potential for love, heartbreak, and growth hung suspended between them, a delicate thread straining against the weight of expectation and social judgment. In the quiet moments after the gala, each wondered, without daring to admit it, whether this collision of worlds could be the beginning of something extraordinary, or the spark that would ignite a fire too wild to control. The early morning sunlight spilled through the cafe's large windows, painting warm streaks across worn wooden tables and the soft hum of espresso machines. Lila Hart wiped down the counter, mentally ticking off the list of tasks for the day: restock pastries, check the inventory, smile at every customer. It was another ordinary morning, and she had convinced herself that the gala incident, the spilled wine, the whispers, the audacity of dancing with Ethan Caldwell, was something she could tuck away, a fleeting embarrassment best left behind. Yet as she arranged the cups for the morning rush, her heart skipped a beat at the sound of a familiar voice. Lila? The voice was smooth, measured, yet there was a vulnerability under the practiced tone that she hadn't expected. She looked up, and there he was, Ethan Caldwell, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, hands casually in his pockets, eyes scanning her with that same curious intensity from the gala. For a moment, she froze, unsure whether to smile or pretend he was just another customer. I'm at work, she stammered, heat rising in her cheeks. I mean, welcome, coffee? Ethan chuckled softly, a sound that felt both intimate and disarming. I know, he said, I wanted to see you. Can we sit? He gestured toward a small table in the corner, far enough from the bustle to feel like a separate world. Lila hesitated, glancing around as if the cafe might swallow her whole. Finally, she nodded, her curiosity battling her instinct for caution. Their conversation began awkwardly, the initial words stilted, hesitant. Ethan asked about her life, her work, and the tiny details of the cafe, and Lila found herself cautiously opening up. She spoke of her mother, her studies, and the volunteer work that brought her closer to her college dreams. Ethan listened, genuinely, his usual charm tempered by an unusual candor. He admitted the pressures he faced, the relentless expectations from his father, the judgment of high society, and the sting of betrayal from his ex. For the first time, Lila saw a side of him that wasn't polished or protected, a man struggling against invisible chains. Just as Lila began to relax, reality intruded. Ethan's phone buzzed with a message, and he frowned. Moments later, he sighed and looked up, his expression tense. My sister, Victoria. She's opinionated, he said, almost as if he was apologizing in advance. Lila nodded, sensing the undercurrent of warning in his voice. Victoria Caldwell, ambitious, sharp, and unrelenting, was notorious for her ruthless drive to protect the family empire. Ethan explained, cautiously, that Victoria had already suggested dating a commoner could jeopardize both his reputation and critical business partnerships. The words hung in the air, a silent barrier between them, yet Ethan's gaze never wavered from hers, compounding Lila's doubts. Her phone began vibrating with messages she had not seen before. Anonymous, biting, and cruel, they mocked her for trying to climb up and reminded her that she didn't belong in Ethan's world. Her hands trembled as she read them, and a knot of fear and self-consciousness tightened in her chest. Was she foolish to believe that a man like Ethan could see her as anything more than a fleeting distraction? The tension spilled over when she returned home that evening. Grace, her mother, noticed Lila's distracted demeanor immediately. Questions followed, gentle but firm. When Lila hesitated, trying to downplay the situation, her mother's eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with concern. Lila, Grace said softly, I just don't want you to get hurt. He's from a world so different from ours. I know you're strong, but this could be dangerous. Lila felt a wave of guilt, torn between the pulse of excitement that had accompanied Ethan's presence and the practicality her mother's words demanded. Ethan, aware of the emotional stakes, sensed her hesitation even across the miles. Over the next few days, he called and texted, candidly admitting that her background didn't matter to him. He spoke of wanting to know her, to understand her world rather than judge it. Each message was a lifeline, a spark that made her heart race, but the anonymous taunts and her mother's caution created a tangle of doubt that threatened to snuff it out. That tension, the collision of desire, fear, societal judgment, and family caution, defined the inciting incident. Lila was caught between practicality and yearning, between the world she had always known and a glimpse into one she had never dared to imagine for herself. And Ethan, for the first time, was willing to risk his meticulously constructed life for something real, vulnerable, and unpolished. Each meeting, each message, each hesitant smile was a thread tightening between them, creating a fragile, electrifying connection. The stakes had escalated beyond flirtation or curiosity. They were now emotional, social, and deeply personal. In this delicate balance, every glance and word carried the weight of potential heartbreak and the tantalizing possibility of love. The days that followed were a delicate dance between stolen moments of intimacy and the ever-looming scrutiny of the world around them. Lila and Ethan met in quiet corners of the city, at small cafes far from the paparazzi and gossip columns, and during late-night walks beneath the glow of street lamps. In these pockets of privacy, the walls each had built around themselves began to crumble. Lila spoke freely of her dreams, college ambitions, the hope of building a career in social work, the desire to make her mother proud without asking for anything in return. Ethan, in turn, revealed cracks in the armor of his world, the suffocating expectations of his father, the betrayals that had made him wary of trust, and the loneliness that accompanied wealth without companionship. Every glance, every hesitant touch, became a language of its own, connecting them in a way that was electric and terrifyingly intimate, but the public world was never far behind. The initial whispers that had brushed against Lila at the gala became a roar in social circles, amplified by social media speculation. Gossip accounts questioned Ethan's motives, suggesting that he was either staged for PR or out of his mind for falling for a woman from a completely different social class. Lila felt the sting of judgment daily, friends hesitated around her, colleagues whispered in the cafe, and anonymous online messages landed like blows to her self-esteem. Every day, she wondered if she was imagining the connection, if the man who seemed to see her as she truly was could really love someone so ordinary. Meanwhile, the first seeds of betrayal took root. Vivian Sterling, seething with jealousy over Lila's unexpected proximity to Ethan, found an opportunity to strike. Photos of Lila at a charity auction, attending in a modest dress yet smiling warmly among the elite, were leaked to a tabloid with a sensational headline, "Gold-digging girl rises in Manhattan's social scene." The words cut deep, their venom spreading across the internet like wildfire. Lila's phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, judgmental comments, snide accusations, and even threats. The harsh reality of public scrutiny made her shrink inward, questioning not just her relationship with Ethan but her own worth. Ethan faced his own battle. Protecting Lila without fueling further scandal was a near-impossible balancing act. His attempts to publicly clarify the truth, to defend her integrity, were met with skepticism and cynicism from his social circle and the press. Every loyal act of support risked undermining his business image, alienating partners, or angering his father, Charles Caldwell, whose vision of family legacy included a partner suitable in both pedigree and influence. Ethan's private moments of affection became freighted with tension, each smile and whispered word shadowed by the potential for public misinterpretation. At a tea home, Lila's mother, Grace, struggled to hide her concern. "I know you care about him, Lila," she said one evening, voice gentle but firm, "but you have to stay realistic. Focus on school, on work. Protect yourself." Her words were not rejection, but caution, a reminder of the precarious line Lila walked between heart and practicality. The weight of her mother's worry compounded the relentless judgment from peers and strangers alike, leaving Lila feeling emotionally isolated even as Ethan reached out across the city, trying to reassure her. Ethan, too, was trapped in a storm of conflicting obligations. His love for Lila was undeniable, yet each passing day of scandal, each whisper of betrayal, magnified the tension between loyalty to his heart and obedience to his family. Charles Caldwell's insistence on marrying someone fitting was no longer a distant threat but a constant, looming presence in boardrooms, private meetings, and casual family gatherings. Every choice Ethan made seemed to carry the weight of his empire, the judgment of the elite, and the fragility of his own reputation. As the rumors festered and the pressures mounted, both Lila and Ethan felt the sting of emotional isolation. Lila questioned whether love could survive public scorn and personal insecurity. Was Ethan truly with her, or was she a convenient escape from the gilded cage of his life? Ethan wrestled with his own guilt and fear, balancing the desire to protect Lila with the harsh reality that his defiance could unravel everything he had worked for, and risk destroying the woman he cared about most. In this rising tension, every interaction became a test of resilience, every stolen moment a triumph over fear, and every social slight a reminder of the chasm between their worlds. Their love, fragile yet potent, existed in defiance of gossip, ambition, and expectation, a flame flickering against wind and scrutiny. It was this mixture of desire and danger, of vulnerability and societal pressure, that defined the emotional landscape of their relationship, one in which trust, courage, and heart would be tested more fiercely than either could have imagined. By the end of these weeks, the stakes were no longer just social or familial, they had become deeply personal. Lila and Ethan were entwined in a battle between love and reputation, authenticity and expectation, private desire and public scrutiny. Each day demanded choices that could either fortify their bond or shatter it, and in every glance, every message, every whispered word, the tension hummed with the promise of heartbreak or the possibility of something transcendent. In the spaces between intimacy and judgment, between longing and fear, their story pressed onward, unforgiving, exhilarating, and impossibly alive. The evening air in Manhattan buzzed with anticipation as the city's elite gathered in the towering glass-walled conference hall for Caldwell Enterprises' annual high-profile business event. The skyline stretched behind them, a glittering panorama of ambition and power, mirroring the high stakes inside the room. Lila Hart stepped cautiously into the crowd, aware of the whispers that followed her like shadows. She had promised herself she would maintain composure tonight, but the tension in her chest made every breath shallow. Dressed in a modest yet elegant gown, she felt both exposed and invisible, an anomaly among the sharply tailored suits, glittering jewelry, and carefully curated socialites who moved through the room with practiced poise. Ethan was already present, the epitome of controlled confidence, his jawline firm and posture impeccable. Yet even he carried the weight of unease tonight, fully aware of the gossip swirling around them. Vivian Sterling, seething from jealousy and craving social dominance, had not missed the opportunity to turn the event into a stage for humiliation. As Lila mingled nervously near the center of the room, Vivian approached with a predatory grace, a perfect, practiced smile masking malice. "Lila," she said loudly, her voice dripping with condescension, "so ambitious of you to be here among people who actually belong. Trying to climb a little higher, are we?" The crowd faltered, a ripple of awkward silence spreading like wildfire. Phones flickered with the first whispers of recording, and Lila felt her cheeks ignite with shame. The sting of Vivian's words was immediate and brutal, cutting deeper than any social snub she had endured. For a moment, she considered retreating, disappearing into the shadows, but before she could move, Ethan's voice rang out, strong and unwavering. "Enough," he said, stepping between. In it, Ethan's carefully chosen words were twisted to suggest he had been using Lila to gain social leverage, framing her as a pawn in his meticulously orchestrated empire. Gasps swept through the room, whispers turned to chatter, and the social media notifications went into overdrive. The magnitude of the moment hit Lila like a physical blow, her vision blurred with tears, a knot of disbelief and anger forming in her chest. Ethan, standing beside her, reached out, but she pulled back, her voice trembling yet sharp. "How could you?" she demanded, her eyes scanning the room, seeing judgment and ridicule reflected in the polished faces around her. "Was any of this real, or was I just a game to you?" Ethan's heart twisted. "No," he said firmly, desperation lacing his tone. "None of it. Lila, you have to believe me. I love you. This isn't about leverage. It's manipulation by someone trying to ruin us." The separation was immediate and public. Cameras flashed, whispers spread, and Lila walked away, leaving Ethan frozen, his chest tight with guilt and helplessness. The fallout was instantaneous. Social media exploded with speculation, business partners raised concerns, and his family's scrutiny intensified. In the midst of it all, Victoria Caldwell revealed herself as a key architect of the scandal. Her motivation, clear and cold, was to protect the family's reputation, ensuring Ethan's choices adhered to the calculated vision of the empire. The revelation struck Ethan like betrayal within betrayal. A sister he had trusted, a family he had tried to honor, had manipulated the very woman he loved. Days passed in tense silence until Lila finally confronted Ethan privately, in the quiet sanctuary of his penthouse, far from prying eyes. Her hands shook, tears streaking her face, voice raw and broken. "I trusted you," she whispered, each word heavy with heartbreak. "I believed in us, and now I don't know anything anymore. How can I know you weren't just pretending?" Ethan stepped forward, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Lila, every word, every touch, Every moment with you has been real, he said, voice breaking under the weight of emotion. Victoria orchestrated this. Vivian used it. They wanted to tear us apart, but I will not let them. You're not a pawn. You're not a game. You're the only thing that's real in my life, and I'll spend everything proving it to you if I have to. The confrontation was intense, fraught with the raw mix of anger, betrayal, and longing. Lila's breaths came in sharp, uneven bursts, the storm of her emotions colliding with the desperate sincerity in Ethan's gaze. Every word he spoke, every plea to trust him, chipped away at the wall she had built around her heart, yet the pain of public humiliation lingered like a shadow. In that private moment, the stakes of their love crystallized. It was no longer just about desire or attraction, but about survival against a world determined to judge, control, and separate them. Their bond was tested by betrayal, manipulated perception, and the unrelenting pressure of social expectation. Yet in the midst of heartbreak, the intensity of their confrontation laid bare the undeniable truth of their connection, a love strong enough to confront deceit, powerful enough to defy society, and fragile enough to be shattered by a single misstep. As the night wore on, Lila remained uncertain, caught between the pain of betrayal and the possibility of redemption. Ethan, resolute and anguished, knew the road to regain her trust would be long, arduous, and perilous, but the depth of his devotion left no alternative. In that climactic collision of public scandal and private truth, the line between heartbreak and hope blurred, setting the stage for a reckoning that neither of them could escape, and cementing the emotional intensity of a love tested by fire, judgment, and family loyalty. Lila Hart's mornings began to feel different. The cramped Brooklyn apartment still smelled faintly of brewed coffee and the city's familiar grit, but now it carried a sense of purpose rather than mere survival. The heartbreak and public humiliation she had endured in the wake of the Gala and Caldwell scandal were no longer wounds that only stung, they had become fuel. She applied herself with relentless focus to her new role at a non-profit legal aid firm, a position she had earned through her own merits and determination. The work was exhausting, emotionally taxing, and, at times, overwhelming, yet every case she handled, every client she assisted, became a testament to her resilience. Each small victory, a successfully mediated custody case, a tenant protected from unjust eviction, reinforced her sense of self-worth and independence. Lila realized that her strength had never been dependent on social approval or a man's validation, it had always been hers, waiting for her to claim fully. Meanwhile, Ethan Caldwell faced his own reckoning within the gilded cage of his family empire. The Caldwell penthouse, once a symbol of comfort and power, now felt suffocating, the walls echoing with unspoken expectations and the weight of scandal. Yet Ethan could no longer remain passive. He confronted his father, Charles, with measured resolve, refusing to bow to the dictates of reputation over truth. He publicly clarified the events that had led to Lila's humiliation, admitting his own missteps while exposing the orchestrated manipulation by Victoria and Vivian. The press coverage was careful but fair, highlighting his honesty, accountability, and commitment to Lila's integrity. Within the company, Victoria faced disciplinary action for her role in engineering deception and sabotage. Her attempts to control Ethan and the family legacy backfired, leaving her influence diminished and her schemes exposed. For the first time in years, Ethan experienced a sense of autonomy, reclaiming control over his life, his empire, and his relationships. Weeks turned into months, and the world outside Lila and Ethan continued its indifferent motion. Their paths crossed cautiously at charity events and professional gatherings, now under a veil of mutual respect rather than public spectacle. The first reunion was tentative, almost painfully ordinary. Lila arrived at a community outreach gala, confident in her dress and demeanor, not because of someone's approval but because she knew her worth. Ethan approached her not with grand gestures or apologies rehearsed for an audience, but with quiet acknowledgement, a simple smile that spoke of recognition and sincerity. "Lila," he said softly, "I'm glad to see you here." "Ethan," she replied, her voice steady, measured, yet carrying the weight of the history between them, "It's good to be here." There was no over-the-top declaration of love, no dramatic overture, just the subtle exchange of two people navigating the remnants of trust, hurt, and hope. Conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by laughter and shared observations, their emotional walls lowered by time, reflection, and mutual growth. Lila spoke of cases she was handling, of the clients whose lives she was impacting, and Ethan listened, genuinely interested, offering insight when appropriate but never overshadowing her. He spoke of restructuring parts of the company, of the lessons learned through the scandal, and of the commitment he now carried toward honesty and integrity. The journey toward reconciliation was measured. Lila no longer sought rescue or validation. Ethan no longer required her forgiveness as a shield for his ego. Their connection was rooted in equality, in the understanding that love was not merely passion or proximity but also respect, accountability, and mutual support. Misunderstandings from the past were addressed with frank conversation, painful truths laid bare and acknowledged, and boundaries set to protect their individual growth. Through these conversations, Lila realized she could care for Ethan without losing herself, and Ethan recognized that protecting Lila's dignity was as important as any business venture or public image. Beyond their personal reconciliation, the experience had reshaped them both. Lila's independence allowed her to thrive professionally and personally, her confidence radiating in every interaction and decision. Ethan's autonomy reinforced his role as both leader and partner, proving that vulnerability and strength could coexist. They became partners not because of necessity or circumstance, but because they had chosen each other consciously, deliberately, and respectfully. In the months that followed, their lives intertwined cautiously but purposefully. They attended events together, volunteered for causes they both cared about, and supported one another's ambitions. The media occasionally noted their appearances, but the difference was striking. There were no scandalous headlines, no whispers of manipulation, only acknowledgement of their shared commitment to growth, integrity, and partnership. Ultimately, the resolution of their story was not a fairy-tale romance of effortless passion and uninterrupted bliss, but a testament to resilience, empowerment, and measured reconciliation. Lila had reclaimed her agency, her independence, and her self-respect, proving that personal growth could coexist with love. Ethan had learned to assert his autonomy, defend integrity, and nurture a relationship built on trust rather than appearances. Together, they embodied a balance between emotional connection and personal empowerment, demonstrating that love is strongest not in the absence of challenges, but in the conscious choice to navigate them with honesty, courage, and mutual respect. In the quiet moments after work, when Lila returned to her apartment, she no longer felt the pangs of social inferiority or fear of judgment. The city outside her window remained vast and indifferent, but she had carved out a space of purpose, dignity, and fulfillment. And somewhere across Manhattan, Ethan, free from the suffocating expectations of his family and society, carried the same clarity. Their paths, once threatened by scandal, manipulation, and doubt, now moved forward in parallel and in convergence, not as a story of rescue, but as one of mutual empowerment, resilience, and the deliberate choice to love with integrity. The city outside Lila Hart's Brooklyn apartment hummed quietly, a distant symphony of taxi horns, muffled conversations, and the occasional siren. Inside, her apartment was still, the warm glow of a desk lamp casting soft pools of light across scattered papers, notebooks filled with notes from her cases at the legal aid firm, and a small stack of textbooks she had been studying late into the night. Lila sat at her desk, fingers loosely clasped, staring at the soft glow of her laptop screen, but her thoughts drifted far beyond spreadsheets and case files. The past months replayed like a vivid montage: the gala, the whispers, the scandal, the heartbreak, the tears, and the slow, painstaking climb back to herself. Each moment had left its mark, shaping her into someone stronger, wiser, and unafraid to claim her own worth. The knock at the door startled her, breaking the quiet rhythm of the night. She rose, cautious but curious, and found no one standing there, only a neatly arranged bouquet of wildflowers, vibrant and fragrant, accompanied by a small envelope. She picked up the note, unfolding it carefully. In Ethan's unmistakable handwriting, the words leapt off the page: "No scandal, no pressure, just honesty. I'll wait if you'll let me." The simplicity of it struck her. No manipulation, no expectation, no obligation, just a candid expression of intent and patience. The gesture was both intimate and respectful, a testament to the growth and lessons learned from their shared trials. Lila allowed herself a slow, quiet smile, one that carried layers of triumph, hope, and the deep satisfaction of having reclaimed her life. She breathed in the sweet, subtle fragrance of the flowers, feeling the soft weight of their presence in the apartment. For a moment, she closed her eyes, letting the silence fill the spaces between her thoughts, understanding that the choice to open her heart again or not was hers alone. The empowerment she had fought for, the independence she had nurtured, could not be rushed or compromised. Even by love. Sitting back at her desk, she reached for her pen and journal, her fingers tracing the smooth surface as she reflected inwardly. Love isn't about status. It's about courage, trust, and the power to choose yourself first, she wrote. The words felt true not because they were comforting, but because they carried the weight of lived experience, the lessons carved by tears, mistakes, and resilience. Lila's journey had been shaped by forces outside her control, yet she had emerged with a clarity and strength that no scandal, whisper, or heartbreak could undermine. As she leaned back in her chair, gazing at the city skyline through her window, the lights seemed to mirror the constellations above each tiny point of illumination, a reminder that hope and possibility existed even amidst darkness. She felt a quiet warmth in her chest, not the rush of infatuation, but a steady, deep certainty in her own capacity to navigate life and love on her terms. The bouquet at her door, the note in her hand, and the faint echo of Ethan's voice in her memory were symbols, not obligations, reminders that connection could exist without compromise, and that respect and honesty were the foundations on which trust could be rebuilt. The night stretched around her like a soft, protective blanket. Lila did not rush to reply, did not clutch the moment in desperation, and did not allow the past to dictate her future. She allowed herself to simply be present, aware, reflective, empowered, and hopeful. There was a catharsis in that quiet act, a sense of closure in having survived both scandal and heartbreak, and an openness to whatever possibilities lay ahead, untainted by fear or expectation. In that stillness, Lila Hart understood the profound truth of her journey. Love, real and enduring, did not demand sacrifice of self. It thrived in courage, honesty, and the freedom to choose one's own path. She smiled once more, a quiet, bittersweet curve of lips, carrying with it the weight of triumph and the glimmer of hope. Outside, the city continued its restless hum, but inside her apartment, there was peace, a measured, patient optimism, a gentle acknowledgement that the hardest battles could yield the most profound growth, and that the heart, once tempered by challenge, could navigate both love and life with grace. Tonight, Lila chose herself first, and that choice, above all, felt like victory.